Hello everybody, and welcome to the fifth and final part of my Levers of Control or Levers of Power series. Today is the final video, and it's going to be a little bit different from all the others. There is no PowerPoint in this particular video. It's going to be me talking to you for God knows how long, and with me, as you know, drawing away. First things first, I'll be going through those four levers: money, education, religion and information, in a whistle-stop tour to remind you what they are. After that, I'll be talking about what I think has combined within those four levers to create where we are today, which is rampant individualism and consumerism. I'm then going to go into three different choices that I want to give to you. The blue pill, as you can see here, is go back to normal. Forget everything that I have gone into and accept your place in the world as a serf, a slave, someone to consistently produce and consume, and that is all that you will do, and maybe produce the next set of slaves or serfs to prop the system. Then you have the red pill. The red pill is all about winning the game, understanding what the system is there to give you, and going, no, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm going to win. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be extremely wealthy in every single way that I can imagine. I'm going to talk about how you can do that, or at least how the elite do that, how they cement and maintain their power using these four tools that I've already talked about. And finally, last but by no means least, the white pill. The white pill is to deny both of the previous options. It is the third way. And it is to say that this third way is to deny the game completely and to create your own game, your own system, your own way of being, and how to go about doing that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, something that I want to explain to you all just before I get on is why I've done this. Why have I spent so much time on this project? I mean, by the end of this, it's going to be around 8 hours long, from start till end. So why have I spent so much time on it? Where's the money or whatever? Where's that coming from? Well, I wanted to create something where I could put this in front of a 21-year-old or 27-year-old or someone who wants to understand how the world works, how the world functions, and give them a choice. We go about our lives mindlessly in a state of hypnosis, not quite recognising what we're doing and how we're doing it. There's so many underlying assumptions and pieces of control which dictate what we do and how we think and how we feel. And it's rare that we're given a choice. So today, I want to give you a choice. I want to give you three different choices. So that one day you can sit back and go, yes, I made this choice. I made this bed. I made this life for myself. And it's mine. And I want to give you back that power over your life. No matter what choice you pick, I want to give you back that power. So without further ado, let's get into it. First off, let's give you a reminder of these four control mechanisms, how they work and how they control and craft society at large. First, we have money. As we know, money is not real. Remember, we make the stuff. We make it up. It's not in nature, and fundamentally, money for the longest time was a receipt. Money started as a means of creating a safe transport for precious metals, so that you could deposit all your gold within a temple, get a receipt of some sort to say it's your gold, travel to the next temple over, give them the receipt and say, I want this gold back, so that I can go about my day and my life and do all these different things as I travel as a merchant. That was what money was. But it's been taken and twisted and turned into something as a form of control. So how do most people live? Most people live in a way where they are trying to trade their time for money. So you are trading a tangible resource, your life, for something that does not exist. And once you have it, it is taxed, it is inflated, and if you have any kind of debt whatsoever, interest is added onto it in the form of usury. So what are these three things? Tax is a punishment for your productivity. So if you work really hard, guess what? You're going to have to give a portion of that to the state. Now, if we were starting a brand new country and it was all from scratch and we all felt all part of the same place, the same village, or the same town or whatever, I can understand taxes. But we don't live in that world right now. We live in a world where your tax money goes in a way to destroy you and to harm you. Because that's the place we are. We're at the end of an empire. Inflation is a tax on your savings. So your money is being devalued. How is it being devalued? Because we're able to create money out of thin air, the more we're creating, the less valuable it becomes. Which is why you can't just print more money, because inflation happens and the value of that money, the value of what you can do with that money decreases. Which is why £1 could have bought you 5 apples yesterday, £1 buys you 4 apples today. Because in comparison, let's say in comparison to the pound or the dollar, while both of these currencies are created out of thin air by imagination, they are competing against each other for how much each one of those is worth, and so they're compared. You can find out more about that by looking up currency trading. That's what that is. You're basically betting whether one currency is going to decrease or increase compared to another currency that's going to decrease or increase. That's all that currency trading actually is. And then finally, we've got usury. Now remember, if the bank and if governments are creating the principal, so the principal is the initial amount of money. So let's say they've created £100. Okay? Created £100, $100. And now, instead of saying, hey, we'll have 100 back plus the inflation rate. So if the inflation rate's 5%, we'll have 105 back, because guess what? The amount of money is going to devalue over time, so we'll just keep up with inflation. That I can understand. What they would say instead is, hey, we're going to give you 100, which the bank has created, by the way, and we want 150 back. Well, where's this 50 going to come from? Because the 100 came from when the bank created it. The 50 has to come from somewhere else. And where does it come from? It comes from someone else. That is where it comes from. So you're always in this constant competition with other people. So if this debt cycle perpetuates, it means there's always going to be winners and there's always going to be losers. And the losers are propped up to say, look, if you don't play by the rules, you're going to be a loser. You're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose everything. That is what a loser is within this system. They're a person who are used as effectively cattle, as a debt slave, to produce money which didn't previously exist, and then by the time that person is utterly riddled with debt, they're then cast out of the system. Oh, it was a bad debt. But by that time that happens, the system has already created enough of this non-existent money, which was never in the first place, to carry on propping up the system. That's how money works. There's winners and there's losers. And because there's winners and there's losers, it's used as a stick to beat you with, to keep you in line. Next we have religion. Remember, religion used to be all about animism. It was about getting closer to nature, that everything had a divine spark, everything was a connection to that divinity. Religion made you believe that in order for you to get close to this divine spark, you had to go through holy men or priests. So if you, as a normal person, wanted to get to this divine spark, you had to go through them. Right? You had to go through them. There was no other way of doing it. Now, if these people were able to convince you that the divinity is outside of yourself, it's not inside of you, it's somewhere else, and that you need these people in order to reach that divine place, then what are you willing to give them in order to get there? You're willing to give them everything. Money, power, food, resources. So religion was created as a means to control the belief system of the masses. It was a moral justification system. And it was this way for thousands and thousands of years. Until recently, we had the invention of science and technology. Now, cast your mind back to 2020 with COVID. What was the word that was used? Trust the experts. The experts. An expert is just another name for a holy person. And it's rather than trying to understand scripture, we now understand data. We live, a modern day religion is science and technology. And we're using exactly the same methods and processes, what we did 1,000 years ago as what we're doing today. But this time, the holy men aren't in robes or garbs. They're in lab coats or suits, as a pedestal is put in front of them and you're told to stay at home, trust the vaccine, and don't ask too many questions. That is the power of religion. The power of religion is fundamentally there to take away your own personal power, your own personal connection to the divine. That is the purpose of religion. It's to make you fundamentally powerless and to construct belief systems around your servitude. That is the point of religion. To disempower you totally. Education. Now, if you remember, we said that if we created a whole new education system, what would we want it to achieve? We would want it to achieve, number one, literacy. So we'd want children that are able to read and write so that they can communicate well in the real world. As we know before, from when we did information, if a child can read and write well and think well and communicate well, then they're going to be very intelligent. The second thing that we'd have is what's called traits-based learning. So that when a child leaves school, leaves the education system, they're able to know exactly what they love to do. And a child which knows what they love to do, they aren't confused. They're able to live a life in total alignment to what they enjoy. The third thing is we'd have a love of learning. The world changes every 3 to 5 years. So to have a love of learning means you're always going to stay on top of what's going on in the world. That's a great thing because it means you're able to spot signs, you're able to spot patterns. And if you're able to spot signs and spot patterns, well then guess what? Your real world experience is only going to deepen. And real world experience is the fourth thing that we would have in our own education system. Because we want children to understand how the world worked, how businesses run, how you could create news articles and how you could write better. Why wouldn't we want children to be able to do those things? And last but by no means least, creative thinking. If a child can think creatively and solve problems, then they can't possibly be enslaved. Because you want a populace that is able to understand the problems and challenges that comes up and think critically about what they see and what they experience. That is what the ideal system would be like. But it is not what the system is actually like. Because we know that actually the school system suppresses critical thinking. We know that it enables hierarchies. We know that it enforces a national identity. We know that children are produced which don't have adequate literacy skills, that don't read books, that can't express themselves. We know that children leave school confused, unaware of their hidden talents. And we certainly know that people leave school without a love of learning. In fact, they hate school, they hate reading. They're made to hate it by having obnoxious tests. So we know that doesn't happen either. And we know that a lot of people leave school without any real-world experience whatsoever, woefully unprepared for the realities of working life. So we know that the average school system does none of these things. So why is that? It's like this for the lower classes. Okay? So for the lower classes, that's what it's like. It's only for the upper classes who can afford private education, which does get these things. Now, why is that? If you are an average person, you are taught pretty much to keep your head down. Keep your head down. Society doesn't like you too much. So you don't want anyone in authority to notice you at all. So you keep your head down, keep yourself focused. But if you are a person who can afford private education, then you are taught that the whole world is a negotiation. If you know the world is a negotiation, then what do you need? You need great communication skills. You need great problem-solving skills. You need to be able to understand other people. You need to be able to understand that hierarchies aren't fixed, that you can ascend those hierarchies and do different things. You're not taught in school that you can negotiate with teachers. You're not taught in school that you can negotiate with anybody. You're just told to do what they want you to do. The whole system is created in that way, to create obedient slaves. But for those that can able to afford private education, they're given really great schooling. And that's what they're taught. They're taught that the whole world is a negotiation. That when you're in a boardroom, you need to express your views clearly. And that's how power works, for your communication ability, your ability to think. And last but by no means least, we have imagination and information. Now, this is the most recent one that we've gone over. As you know, imagination is our ability to enter into this creative space and then get something back. And then information is our ability to receive feedback from the actual world. That is separated by a left and right hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere is all about creativity and entering into this space, and the left hemisphere is all about our five senses and our ability to actually do things in the world, receive feedback from those things, which enables us to then reuse our imagination and then go deeper into this ether, into this creative or imaginative place where all things are. And of course, none of these other things would be possible without imagination, because it is the control key. That's what imagination is. It is the control key for everything else. Which means that all of these systems were created. They were created by a set of people who got together and said, we're going to create a system which benefits us and our families and our offspring at the expense of everyone else. Which means that if the imagination created these systems, the imagination can create better systems. That is the importance of understanding these complex systems and control mechanisms, because we as human beings have made these. We've created these. So we can create better systems. It doesn't have to be this way at all. We can shake off our shackles of 1,000 generations and make new systems, create better systems. All we have to do is enter into this sphere, enter into this place, and come back with something better. Why don't we do that? Why do we still live in a world that is corrupt, that produces bad outcomes, which has objective winners and losers? Why do we still live in that world? Well, number one, power dynamics. The people in charge of this world live a really great life. They don't want to give it up. Why would they? The second is, what do these control mechanisms create? That's what I'm going to go into right now. Now, my argument to you is that these 4 levers of control has created a self-enslavement system. And that self-enslavement system has reached its zenith, has reached the highest point it can go. And that is thanks to individualism and consumerism. Individualism is the belief that the most important unit of moral worth is the individual. It is you, there we go, it is your sister, it is your brother, it is your friends, family, etc., etc., and you're all individuals. And while you might cross over in terms of family, and you might be in a community, you might be in a country, blah, 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 your own worth, your own value as an individual is more than everybody else. That is individualism at the core. Consumerism is about continuous acquisition and consumption of goods and service. These two together create a system where you have been forced to believe that your key to happiness is to consume. And the only way to consume is to work. Now, what do you work for? You work for things. Houses, cars, watches, books. You work for things. You work for status. And the only way to have status is to, of course, guess what? We're back to it. Consume. So you consume. So because you want to consume, you work. Because you want to work, you buy things, and things get status. And in order for you to show off your status, you need to consume more. And that is how the system proliferates. Your ability to acquire things and consume, as mentioned before, affects your status. And only those of higher status can get married, can, win in life, which of course encourages people to take on debt. As we know with money, the more debt you have, the more society likes you. Because if you are in debt and if you're having to compete, it means that you are having to continuously work. I want you to see that individualism has created a world where you have been made to believe, via cultural, religious practice, that the only way for you to receive happiness is via this endless merry-go-round of consumption. This creates the illusion of choice and sovereignty, while binding you to an endless cycle of desire, debt, and dissatisfaction. And this is, of course, fueled by advertising, marketing, all trying to get inside your head, all trying to get inside this left hemisphere of the brain, trying to give you pleasure, short-term gratification over everything else. Thanks to social media, most people are exposed to hundreds, if not thousands, of advertisements daily, all to get you into this desire, debt, and dissatisfaction cycle. Individualism and consumerism combine together create superficial status. It tries to get you as an individual to associate yourself with the things that you have, and your things create your status. So you're trapped. You're trapped in this self-perpetuating cycle where you associate yourself with your ability to get things, which creates status, so that you end up in debt, consuming, putting yourself into endless paycheck to paycheck cycles to afford a lifestyle that is totally beyond the means of the many. No wonder we have such poor mental health. Because this system is the perfect slavery. It is perfect in its creation. Because this is self-perpetuating. There are no chains. There are no physical forces that's forcing you into this cycle. You are choosing it, or at least you think you're choosing it. You were born into a matrix of consumption, and from the moment you were old enough, you've been given a phone or a tablet where your mind was unready for the barrage of psychological attacks it received, so that you internalized this system. And until a person recognizes this is what is happening to them, they will forever be a slave. The world we live in is a world of short-term pleasure over everything else. But just because it gives you pleasure immediately in the short term does not make it good. It does not make it morally desirable. Everything you see here is about your immediate satisfaction. That immediate kick in the left hemisphere of the brain over the right hemisphere of the brain. As you know, the only way in which we can access this right hemisphere of creativity is by giving it space. But if your brain is bombarded with short-term pleasure-seeking activities like social media, gambling, porn, endless bread and circus, endless programming. Why do you think it's called programming on the TV, by the way? Because you're getting programmed, right? Then you can never, ever, ever access this higher reasoning. And if you can't ever access this higher reasoning, then guess what? You're going to stay a slave forever. When individualism merges with consumerism, it creates double-ended slavery, with personal freedoms redefined as a right to consume without limit, weakening both individuals and society as a whole. People become willing slaves, and capitalism demands that you keep prioritising shopping over anything else. Because what you own is the equivalent to who you are, and who you are is status, and you're willing to go into slavery in the form of debt in order to increase your perceived status. And that is, of course, where social media comes in. Social media is a way in which you to artificially inflate your status, your short-term status over your long-term health. That's all social media does. The ultimate form of slavery, the best prison, is the prison that you cannot see or feel. That's what this system is. And I believe that until we're able to understand what has been done to us, the human mind and the human capacity will never be the same again. Not to mention what is happening with artificial intelligence. Our pursuit of technology is terrifying in some ways, because it means that we're going to be more and more reliant on artificial intelligence rather than our own intelligence. And what happens? We become lazy. And when we become lazy, the brain shuts off. The brain is an amazing tool. It's a tool for energy efficiency. If we don't use something over an extended period of time, we lose it. It's that simple. If you've ever seen the film WALL-E, we get those morbidly obese fat people living in chairs. That could be the future of the human race. Total mental retardation. Because most people are willing and happy to be slaves. As long as their immediate short-term gratification is fulfilled, as long as they don't have to think too hard, as long as They can watch their sport, eat their McDonald's, enjoy their fast food. They are willing. And I don't speak as if I haven't been in this system. Of course I have. I was born into this system. I wasn't born as an elite. I'm not an elite. This has just come from years of working with people who have been born into the system. Years of work with people who weren't born in the system, who were born at a higher educational point, private schooling, and understood how they see the world. And I've reversed engineered what's happened. They see the world an entirely different way than what an average normal person sees it. An average normal person is a slave. They are used by the system to prop it up and are crushed beneath it. Now, if we as individuals are constantly competing with each other for status and ego, then we perceive each other as enemies. We atomize ourselves. We separate ourselves from our families. We remove ourselves from the greater societal whole in order to seek greater pleasure. Or we've run out of time and we work and we work and we work and we work, and then finally when we reach 60 odd, we then put ourselves within a greater society. Older people tend to then go on and engage politically because now they've got time and they can do it. But before, they were trapped in these constant cycles of work and debt and things and status, and this continual self-perpetuating system. I believe this is the point of this system, to set us against each other. And I believe that is because the system is trying to prevent collective action. Collective action is the only way in which things change. It's the only way. It is the coming together of people as a harmonious whole, directed into a single course that actually get things to occur. Now, if you are an enjoyer of elite theory is this position that you get a very small minority of people. That minority of people all want the same thing. They then harmonise, and then once they're harmonised, they're able to control many, many different things. Now, I've worked in systems like this, and I'll be honest with you, this is the case. You get organised collective action in harmony. People in harmony with one another, all for their own betterment. And guess what? They perform. They perform better than a disorganised mass. And that's the point. If everyone suddenly woke up tomorrow, none of this would matter. Because everyone would see the game that they're all playing and they'd give it up. And everything would collapse. Now, why don't the majority of people all come together and take collective action? Simple. You are taught to be risk averse. You are taught to take orders. So if the normal person is taught to be risk averse and take orders, then how is that in comparison to the elite, the wealthy? Well, they accumulate money and power together. These families stick together. They help each other in everything that they do. They create a network of elites to help each other. And these are a network of families. And they have lots of children. Lots of children. They work together. They acquire assets together. And they pass those assets and that money on to the next generation and the next. And they accumulate more and more and more wealth and more power as they do so. So how does our four levers prevent collective action. Let me go through it now. Money creates debt cycles. And if you're in debt, then you're going to feel an awful lot of shame. And shame prevents us from being honest and truthful. And if we can't be honest and truthful with others and ourselves, it prevents us from taking part in collective action. Also remember, with individualism, if you are an individual, you are encouraged to consume more, to accumulate more. That's what this money lever is able to do. Endless spending. So without collective action, it isolates the individual. It makes you as a competing unit rather than something that is combined together as part of a greater whole. And of course, consumerism ties your identity and your status with how much you can purchase, which then exacerbates this debt cycle even more. So debt cycles make collective action riskier. Because guess what? Let's say you're a teacher and you're going to strike. Maybe you can strike for a day, maybe a week. But any longer than that, you're going to fall behind on your mortgage payments. You're going to fall behind on the debt you need to pay off. It's not going to be able to work. And guess what? You have material distractions. And that hinders broader mobilisation against any kind of issues. What about religion? What religion does is that it takes what should be shared struggles and it transforms them into individual struggles. This promotes isolation because, hey, you need to remove yourself from society. You need to work on yourself, right? And if you're isolated, then you become easier to control. You become dependent and easily distracted. And of course, we all can see how education plays into this. You're taught from a very early age to think and act like a slave. That's what you do. You think and act like a slave. And again, this all would not be possible without the imagination and the information working hand in hand together. And if we can produce this system, then we can produce a better system. Fundamentally, the whole point of individualism and consumerism is to convince you that you are the problem. That is the point. The more that you can be convinced that you are the problem, the less likely you are to unite with others in a way and take collective action over the greater whole. You'll be convinced that you need drugs. You'll be convinced that you need to spend more time buying things. You'll be convinced that you need to work more, work harder to buy the thing that's going to make you happy. Well, guess what? Nothing in this world is going to make you happy. There is nothing that you can buy that will ever give you long-term happiness. Nothing. And I will stand by that until the day that I die. What gives you happiness? What has always gave human beings happiness is the things you cannot buy. It is family. Family has given people purpose. It is community. And the betterment of the community that makes people happy. It is a shared struggle. That makes people happy. And of course, it is the pursuit of the divine that makes people happy. It's not buying things. It's not consuming things. It's these things that make people happy. You can't buy a family. You can't buy shared struggle. You can't buy community. And you cannot buy access to the divine. You cannot read a book and get access to the divine. You can't just say some words. You have to go within. You have to go within yourself. You have to close off the left hemisphere of the brain and go into something deeper. You cannot buy that. You must experience it. You must do it. Okay? So there you have it. This is how the system works and makes you into a slave. Money, education, religion, and information come together and create a system of consumerism and individualism, which makes your place in society dependent on the debt that you're able to take on board. Your moral worth via the amount of stuff that you have. Your ability to get a mate based on these things. And all of that keeps you effectively a slave. And most importantly of all, it prevents collective action. What I've just described to you in these past few hours and in this past, say, 30, 40 minutes or so, the blue pill is jobs, taxes, individualism, consumerism. It's about knowing your place, watching your sport, and don't ask too many questions. With money, in 2020, this is the fractional reserve lending system that I mentioned to you earlier. With money, the banks no longer have to even hold a fractional reserve. There's no mandatory fractional reserve anymore. They don't have to hold any of your money whatsoever. This means that now more than ever, money simply doesn't represent anything but an abstraction. You trade your money for time which isn't real. Those earnings are then taxed. And what you're left with is eroded away via inflation, which is the rate in which money's perceived value decreases via money printing, money creation, which any bank or government can do. And if you're in debt, the money you owe is constantly growing, oftentimes past the principal, in order to keep you permanently enslaved and working in the system. The reason why it's so dire is because we're at the point where the Western Empire is falling, it's failing. And that's just in terms of the financial system. The working class, the middle class, are the exit liquidity. Exit liquidity is the ability for those to accumulate large sums of wealth. Because in the system to come, when it's all reorganised, I believe that you will have eternal haves and eternal have-nots. But that's probably something for another video. In education, you are not taught to communicate clearly. You are not taught to know what you're best at. You left school confused, not knowing what you wanted to do, not knowing what you wanted to be, so you were easily captured by a system which demanded you to work, which demanded you to earn in order for you to have things that you love and have things that you like. Never, ever going to be fulfilled by anything that you buy. Ever. And of course, the religious system is designed to create a belief system dependent on others or power structures to rob you of your own autonomy. All backed up again by information. None of this would be possible without information. Someone created these systems, remember that. I came up with a question, which is why hasn't the system been overturned? And the answer is really simple. Because the people want it. People want this. I genuinely believe that people want to be slaves. They want to be serfs, and they don't want to think, and they don't want to challenge their own ego. Because in order to challenge their own ego, they have to understand their position in the world. In order for me to get here, I had to recognise that I was a slave. I had to recognise that I was working for something which wasn't going to make me happy. I had to recognise that and leave the system at great personal cost. So why do I know this is the case? Because in every society where knowledge of a true nature of the world has been revealed, people have always panicked. The elites have always felt threatened. And order was threatened in the form of hysteria. I'm not going to go into historical relevance today, but why don't you just go on to Grok or go on to ChatGPT and just ask that. When has there been times where the true nature of the world has been revealed and people have panicked? You will find Galileo, you will find lots and lots and lots of other different thinkers that have been burned at the stake, buried alive, or harmed in different kind of ways because they revealed the truth to the world. And people don't want truth, they want convenience. They want something that's going to make them feel good rather than what is right about the world. All of this is creating a class of people who are totally cut off from themselves, are distracted, and totally pleasure-seeking. This is the ultimate form of these control mechanisms, is what we have today. Consumerism is the perfect slavery. You want stuff and there's always more stuff for you to want, so you trade your life for the stuff that you can't possibly be without, because what are you without stuff? That's it. That's it all summarised in a single sentence. You're poor, you're low status, and you're just plain wrong. Your whole personality revolves around owning, wanting, and buying stuff which would otherwise be meaningless. Individualism and consumerism creates the perfect slave. Because unlike regular slavery with chains and a master, which is clear, the system is clear, you're not told what you can and can't do, what you can and can't think. The system does the work and influences your behaviour, so that you never consider another option. You never know your prison until you start looking for the bars. You never know you're a slave until you start to question. And this is the reason why so many people will never wake up. Because if the prison is comfortable, then why leave? If you take the blue pill, then distraction and pleasure is the aim of the game. It is endless bread and endless circus. That is the blue pill. In the movie The Matrix, which I think is one of my favourite films, Neo is given a choice, blue pill or red pill. And the blue pill, at the end, said if you take this blue pill, you will wake up in your bed the following day and you won't remember any of this ever happening. You'll go about your life completely as normal. And at the time I thought, oh, that's quite cool. You know, they're basically saying that your mind will be wiped, your mind will reset, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until recently that I came to terms with something the brain does. And what the brain does is, as I mentioned before, the brain is a filtration tool. The left side of the brain is a filter. And it filters through your 5 senses. When you experience something in the world that doesn't quite fit your way of viewing the world, your brain reacts in a very interesting way. Because something doesn't quite fit within your reality tunnel, which is basically the way in which you perceive the world, I'll be going into reality tunnel a little bit later, the brain filters out this information. You forget it. You dismiss what you're seeing. You reinterpret the facts, you reinterpret the data to preserve your mental consistency. Which means the reason why the reason why this system hasn't been overturned is because whenever a person sees or experiences something which doesn't quite fit their perceived narrative of the world, they forget it. The brain forces them to forget. The brain will just filter out anything which doesn't match its current reality. And that's when you get the emotional states. Fear and anger. Fear and anger are the 2 emotions that we feel when we experience something that doesn't quite fit our worldview. Our emotions amplify conflict based on identity rather than logic. This is what we call motivated forgetting, where stressful or incongruent memories are suppressed. It is selective avoidance and automatic erasure. That is what the blue pill means. The blue pill means that you will forget. And if you don't forget, then you've chosen a different path. And this video is all about choice. It's all about choice. This whole project is all about choice. And I want to give you a choice. Not just blue or red, but a choice about your entire life. And I want you to follow me. I want you to follow me into making a different choice. fully knowing what life is going to be like when you make this choice. You know what a blue pill choice looks like. It looks like active forgetting. It looks like a life of denial. It looks like a life of pleasure seeking. It looks like a life of continuous regret. That is the path of the blue pill.